Greedy old man. My son-in-law threw wine in my face during Christmas dinner when I refused to give up my room to his parents. My daughter added, "Don't call me your daughter anymore." I smiled calmly, got up, and dialed the number. Phase 1 complete. Next came betrayal, revenge, and justice. The police arrived. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My hand was still on the doorknob when I heard their voices. I'd returned from Thomas Sterling's office early. Traffic downtown had been lighter than expected, and now I stood frozen in my own hallway, keys digging into my palm. After he's gone, this place will finally make sense. Jennifer's voice drifted from the living room, casual as discussing weather. We've waited 3 years already. That was David, my son-in-law. How much longer are we supposed to pretend? I should have announced myself. Should have walked in, asked about their day, played the role I'd been playing since they moved into my West Hills home. Instead, I stayed motionless, listening. "This house is wasted on one old man," Jennifer continued. Something in her tone, not quite cruel but careless, made my chest tighten. "We deserve to be here. We've earned it." "Damn right we have," David said. 3 years of keeping him company, making sure he's not lonely. That's worth something. I backed away slowly, placing each foot with care. The third floorboard from the door creaked if you stepped wrong. I'd learned that when Jennifer was a teenager, sneaking in past curfew. Now I used that same knowledge to retreat silently, to slip back outside and close the door without sound. 30 seconds. I counted them standing on my own porch in the December rain. Then I opened the door normally, letting it swing wide, keys jangling. "I'm home." Traffic was terrible coming back from downtown. The living room went silent. When I walked in, Jennifer was examining her fingernails with sudden intense interest. David's laptop was open on the coffee table, screen angled away from me. "Oh, Dad, we didn't hear you come in." Jennifer's voice had transformed. Bright, welcoming, false. "Just got back from some errands." I set my briefcase down carefully. "What are you two up to?" "Nothing much." David closed the laptop with a soft click. "Discussing Christmas plans?" "Ah, yes. The holidays. Always a busy time." I walked to the kitchen, poured water I didn't want, and stared at the rain-soaked backyard. 3 years of suspicions. 3 years of documenting, watching, hoping I was wrong. Now I had confirmation, delivered in their own careless words. That evening I refilled my coffee and passed through the dining room. David sat hunched over his laptop, absorbed. The angle was wrong for him to notice me, but perfect for me to catch the screen's reflection in the antique mirror my late wife Sarah had loved. Home equity line of credit, Portland, Oregon. Power of attorney, elderly parent. Property valuation, West Hills. He typed numbers into a calculator. $850,000. Then $200,000. Monthly payment estimates scrolled past. My hand tightened on the mug until my knuckles ached, but my face stayed neutral. I continued to my study without a word. Dinner arrived at 7. Jennifer had cooked, rare enough to be notable. She moved food around her plate, cutting chicken into precise pieces she barely ate. "So, Dad, I wanted to mention something." She touched the pearl necklace I'd given her for her 30th birthday. "David's parents will be visiting for Christmas." "Linda and Robert? That's nice. When do they arrive?" "Day after tomorrow. They'll stay about a week." I nodded, chewing slowly. "The guest room is available." "Well, actually," Jennifer's fork paused midair, "Linda has back problems. The guest room mattress might not be ideal for her." "I can purchase a new mattress." "That's not... it would just be easier if they had a more comfortable space." She laughed, too quick, too high. "You know how Linda is about comfort." David said nothing, but his expression was smug, satisfied. "I see." I set down my fork with care. "We'll discuss this later." The rest of dinner passed in loaded silence. Jennifer asked about my day. I mentioned errands, a meeting, nothing specific. David excused himself early, citing work emails. Jennifer cleared dishes with exaggerated helpfulness, like a child trying to earn favor after misbehaving. By 10, they'd retreated to their bedroom. I waited until I heard their door close, their voices murmuring behind it, before I moved. My study was on the first floor, oak-paneled and quiet. I locked the door, a habit from my years as an accountant, protecting client files. Now I was protecting something more valuable. The desk drawer required a key I kept separate from my main ring. Inside lay a thick accordion folder, meticulously organized. I spread the contents across the mahogany surface like a card player revealing a winning hand. Bank statements. 3 years of Jennifer's charges on cards I'd temporarily covered. $95,000 total. Each statement highlighted, dated, cross-referenced. Loan agreement, $32,000 for Jennifer's BMW, signed 2 years ago. To be repaid within 12 months. That deadline had passed 18 months back. Her signature was clear at the bottom. Credit reports, showing their debt accumulation, their minimum payments, their careful avoidance of anything resembling financial responsibility. Photographs, David's laptop screens captured over months. Search histories, loan applications, property value estimates, audio files, saved on my phone, backed up on 3 separate drives. Oregon was a one-party consent state. Every conversation I'd been part of was legally recordable. And finally, dated just this morning, trust documents, irrevocable. The house, upon my death, would transfer to the charities Sarah and I had always supported. Jennifer would inherit nothing but debt. I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Thomas, it's Buford Harrison." My voice was steady. 3 years of practice at controlling it. Thomas Sterling had been my attorney for 20 years. He knew what this call meant. "We need to move forward. Tomorrow morning, if possible." His response was measured, professional. Questions about timing, about certainty, about consequences. "Yes, they've made their final move. Time to execute phase 1. I paused, looking at the evidence spread before me. The trust documents, the loan notifications, everything. He agreed. 9 a.m. tomorrow, his office downtown. "Good. I'll see you at 9. And Thomas, thank you for your patience these past 6 months." I hung up and allowed myself a small, cold smile. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety. I was done with that. I sat at the kitchen table as dawn broke, rain streaking the windows, my folder of documentation beside me like a loyal soldier. 3 years of evidence. Today I would add the final pieces. By 6:45 a.m., I was reviewing my checklist one last time. Trust documents, ready for signature. Loan paperwork, organized chronologically. Withdrawal of power of attorney, drafted and notarized. Everything Thomas and I had spent 6 months preparing. Jennifer and David's alarm went off upstairs around 7:30. I heard it through the ceiling, heard the shower start. By 8:15, I was in my car, pulling out of the driveway before they'd finished their coffee. Let them wonder where I'd gone. Let them assume I was running errands like always. Thomas Sterling's office occupied the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. Rain hammered the windows as we sat across from each other, paperwork between us. "This is the final set." Thomas slid a leather portfolio toward me. "Once you sign, the trust is irrevocable. The house will transfer to the designated charities upon your death. Your daughter will have no legal claim." I opened it, scanning terms I'd already memorized. "And the loan documentation?" "All valid. Every payment you made on their behalf was documented as a loan, not a gift. Their signatures are on file. Total, $127,000. The number was satisfying in its weight. Real, undeniable. When can we serve notice?" "Whenever you're ready." "But Buford." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "Are you certain? This will destroy your relationship with your daughter." I met his eyes. Thomas had known Sarah, had handled her estate when cancer took her 4 years ago. He understood what family meant to me, but he didn't understand what these 3 years had cost. She destroyed it herself. I'm simply acknowledging the reality. I signed. Each stroke of the pen felt like closing a door I'd held open too long. Trust document, loan notices, power of attorney revocation. My signature, witnessed and notarized, making everything official. By 11, I was home. The house smelled of coffee and Jennifer's expensive perfume. She was in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something someone said. She waved at me absently as I passed. The next 3 days blurred together in a choreography of small humiliations. "Dad, we need the Christmas decorations from the attic. All of them. Today." Jennifer stood at the bottom of the attic ladder, not looking up from her phone. I was 64 years old, climbing into dust and heat, handing down box after box, 8 in total, each one heavy with ornaments, lights, artificial garlands Sarah had collected over decades. "Be careful with the ornaments. Some are expensive," Jennifer said when I nearly dropped the seventh box. David walked past without acknowledging me. Didn't offer to help, didn't even slow down. I said nothing. Each box I carried down was evidence. Each ignored courtesy was documentation of who they'd become. "Here's what we need for the Christmas dinner." Jennifer thrust a handwritten list at me the next morning. "Stick to these brands. Linda will notice if we go cheap." I scanned the items. Organic turkey, imported cheese, specific wines I knew cost $65 per bottle. "This will be expensive." "It's Christmas, Dad. Don't be stingy." Something in her tone, dismissive, entitled, reminded me of David. They'd been married 5 years. Sometimes people became their spouses. Sometimes they'd always been this way, and marriage just gave them permission. "How much do you expect this to cost?" $400 maybe? You can afford it." At the grocery store, I loaded the cart methodically. Premium ingredients, exact brands, 3 bottles of wine at $65 each. The cashier rang up the total. $427. I handed over my credit card and watched her swipe it, watched the receipt print. Another entry for the folder, another brick in the wall I was building. That evening, December 18th, 3 days before David's parents arrived, I needed a screwdriver from the garage. Something to adjust the loose handle on my study door. Simple task. I heard David's voice before I opened the door, talking on his phone, assuming he was alone. I stopped, pulled out my phone, activated the voice recorder, stood motionless outside the garage door. "Yeah, I need a property appraisal for a home equity line of credit." His voice was casual, confident. "West Hills area, 3-story, probably valued around $850,000. Pause. "I'm anticipating $200,000 credit line. Should be straightforward given the property value." Pause. "No, not the current owner. Will be transferring to my name soon. Family situation, inheritance process accelerating." My finger pressed harder on the phone, making sure it was recording. "Medical reasons," David continued. "No death yet, but the old man's declining. Power of attorney first, then transfer. Should be finalized by end of January." 4 minutes. That's how long he talked, outlining his timeline, his strategy, his absolute certainty that my house would be his. When I heard him moving toward the house side door, I slipped around the corner, waited for him to pass, then entered through the outside entrance. The recording was already uploading to cloud storage. December 19th arrived cold and gray. Linda and Robert were due tomorrow. Jennifer had been increasingly anxious all day, cleaning, rearranging, instructing me on how things should be. At 8 p.m. she summoned me to the living room. Not asked, summoned. David stood behind the couch, arms crossed. Jennifer sat, gesturing to the chair opposite. Not offering, commanding. "Dad, sit down. We need to discuss something important." I sat. "Linda and Robert arrive tomorrow. They need proper sleeping arrangements. The guest room is prepared." David shifted his weight. "Linda has back issues. The guest room mattress won't work. You need to move to the basement room for the week." The words hung in the air. 3 years had been leading to this moment, the moment they stopped pretending and simply demanded. "No." Jennifer blinked. "What?" I said no. "This is my house, my bedroom. I'm not moving." "Are you serious right now?" David's voice rose. "After everything we've done for you?" Something cold settled in my chest. Calm. Final. "What exactly have you done for me?" "We live here." His face was reddening. "We keep you company. We could be anywhere, building our own lives, but we stay here taking care of you." "Taking care of me? You pay no rent? No bills? No food? I've covered every expense for 3 years." Jennifer's eyes were wet now. "How can you be so cruel? We sacrificed our independence to be here for you." "Sacrificed or convenient?" David took a step forward. "This house will be Jenny's, anyway. You know that. We're just accelerating the inevitable." There it was. Final confirmation, delivered with such casual certainty. They believed they'd already won. I stood slowly. "I see. Thank you for clarifying your intentions. That's very helpful." "Dad, wait." "No. I think we've said everything that needs saying. Excuse me." I walked to my study, locked the door, and retrieved the folder from my desk drawer. I spread everything across the mahogany surface again, but this time with different eyes, not reviewing, admiring. 3 years, 1,095 days of documentation. Every slight, every expense, every entitled demand, all recorded, filed, notarized. They thought I was weak. They thought age had made me manageable. They were about to learn differently. The law was on my side. The evidence was overwhelming. And most importantly, they'd shown me exactly who they were. No more doubt, no more guilt, only action. I closed the folder and allowed myself a genuine smile. Not warm, but satisfied. The trap was set. They'd walked in willingly. Linda and Robert Matthews arrived the next afternoon in a luxury rental car, a black Cadillac Escalade that announced their presence before they even reached the door. I watched from my study window as David rushed down the porch steps, arms spread in greeting. Jennifer appeared from the kitchen, smoothing her dress with nervous hands. Linda emerged from the Escalade like royalty surveying conquered territory. Designer heels touched wet pavement first, impractical shoes for December rain. She paused before fully exiting, her gaze sweeping the property with visible assessment. Her nose wrinkled slightly. Robert circled to retrieve luggage while Linda stood motionless, letting the rain dampen her coat rather than hurry inside. I remained at the window, cataloging details. David's eager gestures, Jennifer's anxious hovering, Linda's critical scan of my home's exterior, Robert's passive following carrying 2 large suitcases that suggested they planned an extended stay. When they entered the foyer, I heard Linda's voice clearly through my open study door. Well, it's certainly spacious, though the aesthetic is rather of another era. We've been planning some updates. Jennifer's laugh was brittle. Modern touches. I should think so. This wallpaper must be from the 90s. And that chandelier, a dismissive gesture I couldn't see but could picture perfectly. Once we're settled in properly, we'll renovate completely, David said. Once you have the authority, yes. Until then, I suppose we endure. I emerged from my study. Linda, Robert, welcome to my home. Linda barely glanced at me. Buford, thank you for accommodating us on such short notice. Family is always welcome. How gracious. Though I understand the guest room situation is less than ideal. That evening's dinner was theater. I'd prepared roasted chicken, vegetables, wine, simple but quality. Linda dominated conversation with surgical precision. Buford, this house really is excessive for one person. Don't you find it overwhelming? I've lived here 15 years. I'm comfortable. Comfortable, perhaps, but practical. She gestured with her fork. A man your age in a 3-story home? The stairs alone must be exhausting. Mom has a point, Buford. David leaned back, expansive. Senior living communities offer so many advantages. I'm 64, not infirm. Yet. Linda's smile didn't reach her eyes. None of us stay young forever. David has told me about your forgetfulness. My what? Just little things, Dad. Jennifer spoke quickly. You know, misplacing keys, forgetting appointments. I've misplaced my keys twice in 3 years. I've missed no appointments. Denial is common. Linda cut her chicken with exaggerated care. My mother was the same way before we had to intervene. Linda, perhaps, Robert began. Robert, please. She silenced him with a look. David deserves this house. He's earned it through patience and devotion. Earned it? I kept my voice level. How? By staying with you, of course. Caring for you. That's worth something. I said nothing more. Each comment was a small blade, precisely placed. I noted them all. Linda's casual cruelty, Jennifer's eager agreement, David's smug satisfaction, Robert's guilty silence. This was rehearsed, coordinated. They'd planned this assault before arriving. After dinner, I excused myself, citing fatigue. In my study, I sat in darkness, door slightly ajar. Around 11 p.m., voices drifted from the living room, all 4 of them speaking in hushed but excited tones. I moved silently through the hallway, positioning myself in shadows where I could hear, but remain unseen. My phone was already in my hand, recorder activated, volume muted. I've researched the legal pathway. David's voice carried confidence. Power of attorney based on diminished capacity. It's completely legitimate if we have medical documentation. But Dad seems fine mentally, Jennifer said. How would we? I know someone. Linda's voice was matter-of-fact. Dr. Gerald Thornton. He and I have an understanding. For $3,000, he'll conduct an evaluation and provide the necessary diagnosis. Linda, that's fraud. Robert's objection was weak. It's expedience, Robert. Don't be naive. What if Dad refuses to see this doctor? Jennifer asked. He won't know he's being evaluated. Thornton will come here as a family friend, make observations, file his report with the court. My legs ached from standing motionless, but I didn't move. Every word was evidence. Once the power of attorney is granted, you'll have full control, Linda continued. Financial, medical, residential decisions, everything. And then? Jennifer's voice was small. Then we move him somewhere appropriate. Selwood Senior Living has an excellent memory care unit, but he doesn't have memory problems. David's response was cold. He will, according to the documentation. That's the point, Jenny. Keep up. The house transfers to you, David gets the equity line he needs for his business expansion, and everyone benefits. Everyone except Dad. He'll be comfortable. Well-fed, supervised. Honestly, it's better for him. He doesn't need the stress of managing this property. Exactly. Linda's voice held satisfaction. We're actually doing him a favor. I stood there for 47 minutes, recording every word. My hands remained steady. This wasn't shock. This was confirmation. When they finally dispersed to their rooms, I returned to my study and backed up the recording to 3 separate cloud services. The next morning, I entered the kitchen at 8. They were already seated, unusual, as typically they slept late. Good morning, I said pleasantly. I have errands to run today. Linda barely acknowledged me, discussing with Jennifer the changes she'd make to the living room. David was on his phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. Texting the corrupt doctor, probably. I'll be back this afternoon. I carried my coffee mug to the sink, rinsed it carefully. Where are you going? David asked without looking up. Banking, paperwork, the usual. By 9:30, I was pulling into the parking garage of Patricia Reeves's office building downtown. Patricia had been my notary for 20 years, handled my first property deals, helped me build my accounting business. When I entered her office, she smiled warmly until she saw my expression. Buford, what's wrong? I set my phone on her desk. Listen to this. We sat in silence as the recording played. Patricia's face hardened progressively, professional concern giving way to outrage. When Linda mentioned Dr. Thornton, Patricia made a note. When David discussed memory care facilities for a man without memory issues, her pen pressed harder against paper. When it ended, she played it again, transcribing key passages. This is conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Her voice was tight. But we need to move fast. If they contact this Thornton before we act, he might file false documentation. What can we do? For 2 hours we worked. Patricia drafted documents with practiced efficiency, formal revocation of any powers of attorney, even those not yet filed, modification of my irrevocable trust to explicitly exclude claims based on alleged mental incapacity, a notarized statement of my current mental competency, witnessed by Patricia and her paralegal, a detailed letter to the Oregon Medical Board regarding Dr. Gerald Thornton's willingness to falsify capacity evaluations. Patricia applied her notary seal with firm pressure, official, legal, irreversible. She made 5 copies of everything, distributed them into separate envelopes. One for you, one for Thomas Sterling, one for my files, one for the safety deposit box, one to be held sealed unless needed. She labeled each carefully. Redundancy. They'll try to claim these don't exist. We need proof in multiple locations. Will this stop them? It removes their legal pathway completely. And Buford, this recording is evidence of attempted elder abuse. If they proceed, you could press charges. I don't want them arrested. The truth surprised me. I want them gone. Then we make it impossible for them to stay. Legally, financially, emotionally, impossible. When I left her office, the rain had intensified. I drove home slowly, taking the long route through downtown Portland. I needed time to think. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made my decision about what came next. The house was bright with lights, laughter audible from inside. They were celebrating something, probably their brilliant plan. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, rain drumming on the roof, watching them through the windows. Then I collected myself and entered. Successful errands? Jennifer asked absently from the couch. Very successful, I replied. The next morning, I entered the kitchen to find all four of them already seated, waiting. The staging was deliberate. Linda occupied my usual chair at the table's head, David to her right, Jennifer to her left, Robert at the far end. A single chair remained open, positioned like a defendant's seat, isolated and facing them all. I noted the arrangement, but took the chair without comment. Poured coffee slowly. Let the silence build. Linda broke first. Buford, we need to address the sleeping arrangements. That guest room situation is completely unacceptable. Unacceptable how? The sofa bed is ancient. I've barely slept. My back is in agony. We require proper accommodations. Dad, it's just for a few days. Jennifer touched her necklace. Nervous habit. Can't you be flexible? And where would you suggest I sleep? The basement room is perfectly fine. David's voice carried casual dismissal. Climate-controlled, private, comfortable. You're one person rattling around in a master suite, Linda added. We're two people on a fold-out couch. The logic is obvious. I took a sip of coffee. The logic is that I should vacate my bedroom in my house for your comfort? The logic is that you should be gracious to your guests. No. What? David's head snapped up. No. I will not be moving to the basement. Not for a few days. Not at all. The refusal triggered something. David leaned forward, elbows on the table. Since we're discussing living arrangements anyway, let's address the larger issue. This house is too much for you, Buford. I manage fine. Do you? Linda's voice held practiced concern. 3 flights of stairs at your age? The yard work? Property maintenance? It's overwhelming. Jennifer and I need stable housing. David gestured between himself and my daughter. We're in our 30s, building careers, planning our future. You need simplicity. What exactly are you proposing? Senior living. There are excellent communities in Portland. Oak Gardens, for example. Beautiful facility. All amenities included. You've researched this? We've just looked into options, Jennifer said quickly, for when the time comes. And you believe the time has come? Yes. Honestly, it's overdue. David spread his hands. You should be somewhere with support staff, medical care, social activities, with people your own age. I'm 64, not 84. Age is just a number. It's about capability. Linda cut her toast into precise squares. And realistically, you're declining. Declining? Based on what assessment? Based on observation. Memory issues, mobility concerns, difficulty maintaining this large property. I have no memory issues. My mobility is fine. The property is well maintained. You're in denial. That's common. I set down my mug with care. And what happens to this house if I move to Oak Gardens? David smiled. It stays in the family, obviously. Jennifer inherits eventually anyway. This way she benefits now, when she needs it. I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator, typed 4,500, 12, showed them the result, 54,000. So I pay $54,000 annually for a studio apartment while you live here rent-free? Dad, don't make it sound so mercenary. Jennifer's voice was strained. We're trying to help you. Are you? I turned to face her directly. Jennifer, look at me. She wouldn't. Do you truly believe I need this help, or do you need this house? I think it would be better. Her voice was barely audible. For everyone. Better for me, or better for your situation? Both. You'd have care, we'd have stability. 3 years ago, you moved in here saying you needed temporary help. Just until we get on our feet, you said. Was any of that true? It was true then. And now? Now things have changed. We have different needs. So when you said you were here to take care of me, you actually meant you were positioning yourselves to take possession of my assets. Stop twisting her words. David stood abruptly, palms flat on the table. We're thinking about your welfare. My welfare? Or your inheritance? Both. Why can't it be both? Because one is generous and one is greedy, and I'm curious which is actually motivating this sudden concern for my well-being. David leaned over the table, looming. You're being stubborn. Think about Jennifer for once. She's your daughter. She deserves security. She has security. She's lived here rent-free for 3 years. Temporary security. We need permanent arrangements. By permanent, you mean ownership of my house. I mean appropriate distribution of family assets. You're going to end up in Oak Gardens eventually, whether you cooperate now or not. David's voice dropped, threatening. We can do this the easy way, or we can pursue other options. Other options? Explain. He caught himself realizing he'd said too much. Legal options. Standard procedures for elderly individuals who can't properly manage their affairs. And you believe I can't manage my affairs? I think you're becoming incapable of making sound decisions. This conversation proves it. I smiled, cold, knowing. The expression clearly unsettled him. How fascinating. And these legal procedures, you've researched them? I've consulted resources, yes. What kind of resources? That's not relevant. The point is there are mechanisms like power of attorney, perhaps, among other things. My smile widened slightly. I see. Well, you should certainly explore all your options, though I'd suggest consulting with a qualified attorney first. Legal procedures require proper documentation. Inadequate paperwork can lead to complications. Are you threatening us? Linda's voice was sharp. Threatening? No. Advising. The law is complex. One should be careful when attempting to invoke it. I stood, pushed my chair in, carried my mug to the sink, rinsed it methodically, placed it in the dishwasher, every movement deliberate. I appreciate your concerns. I'll give your proposal the consideration it deserves. Linda looked triumphant. So you'll look at oak gardens? I'll consider everything you've said. When will you decide? David asked. After Christmas. Speaking of which, tomorrow evening I'm hosting a dinner. 6 o'clock. I've invited guests. What guests? Jennifer's voice rose. I thought it was just family. Old friends, people I should have included from the start. You'll meet them tomorrow. Who specifically? David's confidence was wavering. People who matter. They'll be interested to meet all of you as well. This is highly irregular, Linda protested. Christmas should be family only. My house, my guest list. 6 o'clock. Dress appropriately. First impressions are important. What does that mean? It means be on your best behavior. These guests are observant. I turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and David? About those legal procedures you mentioned? Consult an attorney before filing anything. You'll want to ensure your documentation is ironclad. Judges are particular about legitimacy, especially in elder law cases. Attempted fraud, even unsuccessful fraud, carries serious consequences. Who said anything about fraud? Did I say fraud? I meant errors. Paperwork errors. Easy to make when one rushes into legal processes without proper guidance. Buford, what are you implying? Linda's voice had lost its confidence. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. The law protects vulnerable individuals from exploitation. It's quite robust, actually. Courts take these matters seriously. I stepped through the doorway. 6 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late. My guests are punctual people. Behind me, silence stretched. Then Linda's voice, uncertain. What did he mean by that? Nothing. David's response lacked conviction. He's just posturing. I don't know. Robert spoke for only the second time all morning. The way he looked at you, David. That wasn't a desperate man. That was a man holding all the cards. I closed my study door and allowed myself a genuine smile. Christmas Eve arrived with gray skies and steady rain. I spent the afternoon in my study, making final calls, confirming arrangements. Jennifer and David moved through the house like ghosts, cleaning nervously, watching clocks. Linda complained about the guest room, the meal preparation, not being consulted on the menu. By 5:45, the dining room was ready. My best china, candles lit, wine breathing on the sideboard. I'd set 7 places instead of 5. Let them wonder. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Thomas Sterling stood on the porch, briefcase in hand, wearing a sharp charcoal suit. Thomas, right on time. Come in. I led him to the living room where the others waited. Everyone, this is Thomas Sterling, an old friend. Thomas, my daughter Jennifer, her husband David, and David's parents, Linda and Robert. Thomas shook hands with practiced ease. I watched David try to assert dominance through grip strength. Thomas didn't react. Linda offered barely her fingertips, dismissive. Jennifer's hand trembled. Pleasure to meet you all. Thomas's voice was warm but professional. Buford's spoken fondly of his family. How do you two know each other? David asked him. We've worked together on various matters over the years. Business associates, you could say. What kind of business? Linda's eyes narrowed. Legal matters, primarily, Property management, estate planning, that sort of thing. David tensed. You're a lawyer? I am. Though tonight, I'm just a friend enjoying Christmas Eve dinner. Dad didn't mention you were coming. Jennifer's voice was thin. I mentioned I was inviting guests. Thomas is always welcome at my table. Linda's response was ice. How fortunate for him. Dinner began with forced civility. I served the first course. Butternut squash soup, simple but elegant. Linda's first words, "This vintage is pedestrian." She gestured at the wine. Rather common for a formal dinner. David drained his first glass before the soup was finished. Poured a second immediately. His hands weren't quite steady. Thomas made pleasant conversation about Portland weather, the holidays, nothing substantial. But his presence unnerved them. I could see it. Jennifer barely touching her food. David drinking faster than eating. Linda's rigid posture. Halfway through the main course, David's wine courage kicked in. Buford, Jennifer and I have made a decision about your living situation. His words carried forced confidence. After the holidays, we're helping you transition to Oak Gardens Retirement Community. They have availability, $4,500 monthly. Perfect for your needs. I cut my chicken with deliberate care. And who pays this $4,500? You will, Dad. Jennifer spoke quickly. From the sale of this house. I'm selling my house? It's the logical solution. David leaned back, expansive. You move somewhere appropriate. We maintain the family home. Where will you live? Here, obviously. Someone has to maintain the property, manage everything. I set down my fork. This property isn't yours to manage. Not yet, David's voice rose. But it will be. You're not eternal, old man. Jennifer inherits eventually. We're just being practical about timing. David's absolutely correct. Linda nodded. You're hoarding assets that should benefit the family now. Thomas spoke quietly. Interesting perspective. I'm sorry, who asked for your input? Linda turned on him. Nobody. But as Buford's legal counsel, I'm naturally interested in discussions about his estate. Legal counsel? David's face flushed. What affairs? Thomas has handled my affairs for some time now, I said calmly. Jennifer's voice cracked. Dad, what's going on? Linda pivoted abruptly. Speaking of practical matters, Buford, I'm finished being diplomatic about sleeping arrangements. Tomorrow's Christmas. I will not spend it exhausted from another night on that sofa. You're giving us your bedroom tonight. No, Linda, I'm not. David stood, chair scraping back. Yes, you are. This is ridiculous. One person in a master suite, two people on a couch. One person in his own bedroom, in his own house. Your house? Your bedroom? David's voice cracked. You keep saying that like it means something, like you'll be here forever. Old man, you're in our way. Everything here will be ours eventually. Why are you making this so difficult? Because it's mine, not yours. Not eventually. Mine. How selfish. Linda's voice dripped contempt. How utterly selfish. David grabbed his wineglass, still half full. His face was crimson, eyes unfocused. Greedy old man, you have everything and share nothing. You're selfish and pathetic. His arm drew back. David, don't. Jennifer's warning came too late. The wine arced through candlelight, hit my face, splashed across my white shirt, dripped onto the table. Cold shock of liquid, red staining white. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The glass slipped from David's hand, hit the table edge, shattered on the floor. Jennifer gasped. Linda exhaled. Satisfaction or shock, I couldn't tell. Robert stood, moved toward the door. Thomas pulled out his phone. I reached for my napkin. Wiped my face methodically. Temple, cheek, chin, neck. Set down the napkin, stood. Pulled my phone from my pocket. Phase 1 complete. I scrolled to contacts. Selected Detective Morrison, pressed speaker. The dial tone filled the silent room. Once, twice, 3 times. Morrison? Detective, it's Buford Harrison. You can come now. Everything's recorded as we discussed. Her voice was professional, clear. I'm 5 minutes away. Keep everyone at the location. Don't let anyone leave or destroy evidence. Understood. I hung up, set the phone on the table, looked at each of them. David's face had drained of color. What did you do? You called the police? On us? I called a detective investigating conspiracy to commit fraud against an elderly person. Fraud? Jennifer's voice was barely audible. What fraud? The plan to forge medical documents. the scheme to obtain power of attorney through falsified mental capacity evaluations. Dr. Gerald Thornton, $3,000 for fabricated diagnoses. Ring any bells? Linda's hands trembled. How do you know that name? I know everything, Linda. Every detail of your conspiracy. I've known since December 20th when you discussed it in my living room. You recorded us? David stumbled backward. That's illegal. Thomas spoke calmly. Oregon Revised Statute 165, 540. One-party consent. Entirely legal when Mr. Harrison recorded conversations in his own home. Dad, please, Jennifer was crying again. This is a misunderstanding. Explain to Detective Morrison when she arrives. I'm sure she'll be fascinated. This is entrapment, Linda's voice shook. Provocation. This is documentation of conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud, Thomas said. Very different things, Mrs. Matthews. Through the window, I saw headlights sweep the driveway. 3 minutes had passed since the phone call. I stood by the window, wine still staining my shirt. Thomas had his briefcase open, reviewing documents. David paced, running hands through his hair. Jennifer sat frozen, mascara streaked. Linda maintained rigid posture, but her hands trembled. Robert stood by the door, coat already retrieved. Headlights swept the driveway. An unmarked sedan parked. 2 uniformed officers emerged, followed by a woman in plain clothes. I opened the door before she could knock. Detective, thank you for coming. Mr. Harrison. She was early 40s, professional demeanor, sharp eyes. She showed credentials. Detective Sarah Morrison, Portland Police. 2 uniformed officers, Martinez and Chen, remained near the entrance, blocking exits. Morrison entered the dining room, surveying everything. Wine-stained table, broken glass, my ruined shirt, 4 people in obvious distress. 1 calm lawyer with open briefcase. You reported an assault and conspiracy to commit fraud? I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small digital recorder. Everything's documented. The assault happened minutes ago. The conspiracy... I pressed play. David's voice filled the room. Recorded December 20th. Dr. Thornton will provide the evaluation for $3,000. This is entrapment. David's voice was too loud. He provoked us. Recorded us illegally. Morrison held up a hand. Sir, I'll get to you. Mr. Harrison? Thomas stepped forward. Detective, I'm Thomas Sterling, Mr. Harrison's attorney. Oregon is a one-party consent state. These recordings are completely legal. Mr. Harrison recorded conversations in his own home, to which he was a party. Morrison nodded, familiar with the law. But he set us up. David tried again. The whole dinner was a trap. So you're admitting the statements on the recording are accurate? David froze, realizing his mistake. My son has had too much to drink. Linda's voice was strained. He doesn't know what he's saying. Morrison glanced at the wine bottles. I can see that. Sir, have you consumed alcohol tonight? That's irrelevant. Actually, it's quite relevant to credibility and behavior. Morrison listened to key portions of both recordings. Her expression hardened when Linda's voice mentioned falsifying medical documents. She made notes. Dr. Gerald Thornton, $3,000. Falsified capacity evaluation. When the recording reached the wine-throwing moment, she looked at my stained shirt, then at David. Did you throw a beverage at Mr. Harrison? He was being impossible, refusing reasonable requests. That's not an answer. Did you throw wine at him? David looked around for a lawyer who wasn't there. Yes, but... No buts needed. Simple assault. Minimum. She continued writing. Are you arresting us? Jennifer's voice cracked. That depends. Mr. Harrison, do you wish to press charges for the assault? I considered. Everyone watched. I could destroy them completely right now. Not for the assault. I want it documented, but I don't want my son-in-law arrested on Christmas Eve. Jennifer exhaled. Premature relief. However, I do want the conspiracy investigated. Attempted fraud against an elderly person, conspiracy to falsify medical documents, attempted illegal seizure of assets. Morrison nodded. We'll open an investigation. I'll need to interview everyone separately. She turned to Linda. Mrs. Matthews, do you know a Dr. Gerald Thornton? Linda's face paled. I want an attorney present before answering questions. That's your right, but refusal to cooperate is noted. After brief individual interviews, basic information gathering, Morrison released everyone with warnings. Don't leave the Portland area. We'll have follow-up questions. If anyone contacts Dr. Thornton or attempts to interfere with this investigation, that's obstruction. Linda stood immediately. Robert, we're leaving. Now. Jennifer called after her. Mom, wait! You got us into this situation, Jennifer. Linda's voice was cold. You and your weak spine. We're going home. Sounds of rapid packing upstairs. 15 minutes later, the Escalade pulled out, heading back to Seattle. Fleeing, though technically allowed since they weren't charged. Yet. After the police left, it was past 10. David and Jennifer sat on the couch, stunned. I went to my study, returned with Thomas. Thomas opened his briefcase, removed official documents. Jennifer Matthews and David Matthews, I'm here in my capacity as legal counsel to formally serve you with the following notifications. He placed documents on the coffee table. First, notice of irrevocable trust. The property at this address has been transferred to an irrevocable trust. Beneficiaries, Portland Breast Cancer Research Foundation and Oregon Food Bank. Upon Mr. Harrison's death, this property transfers to said charities. You have no current or future claim to this asset. David's face drained of color. Second, notice to quit. As residents without a valid rental agreement, you are hereby given 30 days to vacate the premises. Third, loan repayment demand. Total amount owed, $127,000, representing car loan, credit card payments, and other expenses paid on your behalf over 3 years. Payment plan or legal action commences January 15th. Jennifer stared at the papers. Dad, what is this? The truth. Everything I gave you was documented as loans. You signed the papers. You just never read them. David picked up the car loan document, saw Jennifer's signature. $32,000 for the Lexus? With interest, Thomas said. And that's just one item. You can't do this, Jennifer's voice broke. I'm your daughter. You said not to call you that anymore. I'm honoring your request. Jennifer picked up the trust document, hands shaking. Breast cancer research? Food bank? Not me? Because charity won't try to defraud me, forge documents to declare me incompetent, or conspire to lock me in a memory care facility I don't need. She grabbed the eviction notice. 30 days? Where are we supposed to go? That's not my concern. You made it clear tonight you don't want to be my daughter. Daughters don't demand their fathers be institutionalized so they can steal property. The loan document showed the total, $127,000. We can't pay this. Then you'll face collections, wage garnishment, asset seizure. The legal processes apply to everyone. Thomas gathered his copies. You have 30 days to vacate. The loan payment is due January 15th. Any questions should go through proper legal channels. He left. The front door closed. Jennifer and David sat in silence. Documents spread before them like evidence of their own destruction. Finally, understanding. They'd lost everything. Christmas morning arrived hollow and quiet. I woke early, made coffee in my kitchen without interference for the first time in 3 years. The absence of tension felt strange, almost unfamiliar. Upstairs, David and Jennifer hadn't slept. I'd heard them moving around all night, voices murmuring, laptop keys clicking. Around 8, David appeared in my study doorway. His eyes were red from screen staring, not tears. We need to talk. I didn't look up from my book. We have nothing to discuss. Everything was explained last night. I'm getting a lawyer. Those documents won't hold up. Feel free to consult counsel. Thomas Sterling followed the law precisely. You'll waste money, but that's your choice. His jaw clenched. You manipulated Jennifer into signing those papers. I offered assistance with expenses. She signed standard loan agreements. If she didn't read them, that's her responsibility. No court will uphold this. Every court will. The documents are notarized, witnessed, legally binding. Your lawyer will tell you the same, after charging you several $1,000s. He left. 2 hours later, he was gone in Jennifer's Lexus, heading to some attorney willing to meet on Christmas Day. By noon, he returned. I heard him come in, heard Jennifer's urgent questions, heard his defeated response. He says we have no case. That afternoon, Jennifer found me in the living room. She'd been crying all morning. She tried the emotional approach one final time. Dad, I'm your daughter. Blood. Family. You can't actually go through with this. I remained in my chair, book open. You told me not to call you my daughter. December 23rd, approximately 7:46 p.m. Those were your exact words. I was upset. I didn't mean it. I looked at her properly. You meant it enough to say it in front of witnesses, including a police detective. You meant it enough to support a plan to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. Which part exactly didn't you mean? She had no answer. Tears, apologies, promises to do better, all flowed freely. I remained unmoved. I would have forgiven the greed. I would have forgiven the manipulation. But you conspired to take my freedom. That crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. The next day, David's desperation took a predictable turn. He contacted the Portland Tribune with his version. Cruel father evicting his own daughter just after Christmas, demanding repayment for gifts given over years, leaving them homeless over a family dispute. The reporter published a brief online article. For a few hours, social media buzzed with outrage. People loved that narrative. Heartless parent, suffering children. David thought he was winning. Then I made my move. I contacted the same reporter, provided complete context, recordings of the conspiracy, documentation of the power of attorney scheme, proof of attempted fraud, copies of loan agreements showing legitimate debt collection. I also provided Detective Morrison's statement, confirming an active investigation into conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The reporter, realizing she'd nearly published a one-sided story about fraud victims, issued a correction and full investigative piece. Elderly Portland businessman foils family fraud scheme. The article detailed everything: the conspiracy, the corrupt doctor plan, the wine-throwing assault. David's name was prominently featured. His original sympathetic narrative was destroyed within hours. That evening, David's phone rang. His supervisor. David, we've seen the news coverage. The company can't be associated with someone involved in an elder abuse investigation. We're placing you on unpaid leave pending resolution. Corporate speak, for you're likely fired. 2 hours later, Jennifer received a similar call from the salon owner. This publicity isn't good for business. Clients are uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but I need to let you go. Both unemployed within hours. Their modest but stable income evaporated. That evening, they sat at the kitchen table surrounded by laptop screens, showing apartments they couldn't afford, loan applications already denied, job postings now impossible because Google searches of their names produced that article. David slammed his laptop closed. This is impossible. We have nothing. We can't afford to move, can't afford to stay, can't afford a lawyer to fight it. Jennifer stared at her phone, reading comments. Hundreds of strangers celebrating their downfall. Greedy. Scheming. Karma. She looked at David. My father did this. He planned every piece of it. For months, maybe years. We never had a chance. David's response was bitter. We had every chance. We just thought we were smarter than him. We were wrong. The morning of December 27th, David woke after maybe 2 hours of sleep. Jennifer was already awake, laptop open, scrolling through apartment listings with dead eyes. She'd been doing this since 5 a.m. Search, calculate, realize it's impossible, repeat. What about this one? She pointed to a studio. $200 monthly. David joined her, coffee forgotten. $200 plus deposit is $600. We have $200. Minus moving truck, utility deposits, food. She trailed off. We'd be broke in a week. They kept searching anyway because the alternative was accepting they were trapped. By noon, they'd called 15 apartment complexes. Each conversation followed the same script. Yes, we're interested. Credit check? Well, there's some outstanding debt. How much? Oh, $127,000. No, I understand. Thank you anyway. 13 rejected them immediately. 2 said maybe, but required co-signers with excellent credit. They had none. David tried a private landlord on Craigslist. The landlord Googled their names during the call. Is this you in the Portland Tribune article about the fraud investigation? Click. Dial tone. Their names were poison. Jennifer went to the bank, hoping for a personal loan. The loan officer was sympathetic until he ran the credit check. Mrs. Matthews, you have a registered debt of $127,000 with an active collection notice. Your debt-to-income ratio is, well, infinite since you're currently unemployed. I can't approve any credit. What about our savings? He checked. $4,587.23 in your joint checking. That's all you have with us. She'd hoped there was more somewhere. There wasn't. Mid-afternoon, David decided to sell Jennifer's Lexus. He retrieved the title from their filing cabinet. Owner name, Buford Harrison. He reread it 3 times. The vehicle they'd driven for 2 years wasn't theirs at all. He found me in my study. The car, you own it? According to the title and loan agreement, yes. It's collateral for the debt. We need it. For work, for finding housing. You're welcome to continue using it until you vacate. After that, it reverts to me as partial debt repayment. That's worth $25,000. That barely covers a fraction of what you claim we owe. Correct, which is why the remaining $102,000 will still need to be addressed. Evening found them back at the kitchen table. Jennifer had a legal pad filled with calculations all crossed out. Current assets, $4,087. Minimum housing deposit, $3,500. Remaining, $687. Monthly expenses, food $400. Phone Zotch, $40. Insurance $200. Gas $100. Total $840. Deficit $153. And that's before rent. David looked over her shoulder. This assumes we find an apartment that accepts us, which we can't. It assumes we have income, which we don't. Jennifer drew a circle around the numbers. We're $150,000 in the hole when you count the debt. We make nothing. We have nothing. Your father knew this exact calculation. He engineered it so there's no escape. Jennifer stared at the pad. No, he engineered it so we'd understand exactly what we did. We lived off him completely. Every comfort we had was his. We just didn't realize it because he never made us feel it. Until now. That evening, Jennifer found me in the living room, reading by lamplight. She stood in the doorway. No tears left, just exhaustion. What do you want? Tell me. Money? Public apology? Me on my knees? What would make you stop this? I marked my page, closed the book, looked at her properly for the first time in days. I want you to understand something fundamental. Dignity isn't purchased. It can't be negotiated or borrowed. You sold yours for the illusion of easy money, a house you didn't earn, wealth you didn't build, security you didn't create. I'm not punishing you, Jennifer. I'm removing the support you took for granted and forcing you to stand on your own merit. If you have none, that's not my failure. It's yours. She stood there, those words sinking in. For the first time, she wasn't arguing or manipulating. She was listening. You've been planning this for how long? 3 years. Since the day I realized you saw me as an obstacle to inheritance rather than a father. And there's nothing I can do? Nothing that would change your mind? You had 3 years to treat me with respect. You chose contempt. You had opportunities to be honest. You chose conspiracy. You had chances to see me as human. You chose to see me as an asset to acquire. Those choices are final. These consequences are earned. She turned to leave, paused at the door. Did you ever love me? Your daughter? My voice was quiet but clear. I love the daughter I raised. I don't know who you've become. She walked out. I returned to my book, lamp casting warm light in my reclaimed home. Upstairs, Jennifer packed what little truly belonged to them, which turned out to be almost nothing. Jennifer woke to winter sunlight streaming through windows that would never be hers. Today was departure day. December 28th, the deadline I'd given them reduced from 30 days to 10. No extensions, no negotiations, no mercy. She looked around the guest room, their temporary home for 3 years. She saw it clearly now. They'd always been guests, never residents, never family. David was already awake, 2 suitcases open on the bed, nearly empty. That's all we can take? He gestured around the room. Everything else is his. The bed, dresser, lamp, even the hangers. We take our clothes and leave. 2 suitcases for 3 years of living. That was the sum of what they actually owned. They went through possessions methodically, discovering truth in each item. Jennifer reached for her jewelry box, gifts from me over birthdays and Christmases. Can I take these? David checked Thomas Sterling's documents. Gifts valued over $500 revert to estate as debt payment. How much are those worth? Maybe $3,000. Leave them. Her laptop, purchased by me for salon work. This belongs to him. Leave it. Kitchen appliances bought with my credit card. Mine. Artwork selected with my money. Mine. Books, decorations, cookware, everything stamped with my invisible ownership. By noon, 2 suitcases contained clothes, toiletries, a few personal photos, their sum total. 3 years reduced to 60 pounds of fabric and memories. At 2 p.m., they did a final walkthrough. Each room was a monument to their delusion. The dining room where they'd eaten hundreds of meals, my table, my chairs, my food. The living room where they'd watched television, my TV, my couch, my subscription. Jennifer stood in the kitchen, hand on the granite countertop. I told people this was my house. I gave advice on home renovation like I owned it. Everyone was wrong, David said, including us. They carried suitcases downstairs. I was in my study, door open, deliberately visible. They passed without speaking. I didn't look up from my computer. They were already gone to me. They drove to the Starlight Motel on 82nd Avenue, the kind of place that rents by the week, charges cash, asks no questions. $65 per night was all they could afford. The room was 200 square feet. 1 bed, 1 bathroom, 1 window overlooking the parking lot, 1 ancient TV bolted to the dresser. The heater rattled. The carpet bore stains. This was what $4,000 purchased. 60 nights of barely adequate shelter. Jennifer sat on the bed, testing the springs. They squeaked. She thought of the guest room bed they'd just left. Memory foam, high thread count sheets, quiet comfort. This is our life now. David dropped the suitcases. Temporarily, until we recover. Recover how? We have no jobs, no references, no credit, and everyone who Googles our names finds articles about fraud. At 4 p.m., someone knocked. A courier with certified mail. David signed, opened it. Portland Police Department letterhead. Investigation R.E. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Case closed. Insufficient evidence to prosecute. While recorded conversations demonstrate intent to commit fraud, no actual fraudulent actions were completed. Case filed as resolved with notation. What does that mean? Jennifer asked. Means we're not being charged, but it's permanently documented. Any future background check shows we were investigated for elder abuse conspiracy. So we're guilty without being convicted? We're tainted, which is almost worse. Conviction you can eventually clear. Suspicion follows forever. An hour later, another envelope. Columbia Credit Services. Debt collection notice. $127,000 principal plus accrued interest. Payment plan required within 30 days, or wage garnishment proceedings initiated. Payment options: $3,000 monthly for 4 years, or $1,500 monthly for 8 years, or lump sum settlement of $110,000. This is impossible, David said. Jennifer read over his shoulder. What happens if we don't pay? Wage garnishment, asset seizure, property liens, credit reporting, civil judgment. They can take money we don't have from jobs we don't have. We signed the papers. That's all that matters legally. Evening settled. They sat on the bed, nowhere else to sit. TV stayed off. The heater rattled. A couple argued next door, voices bleeding through thin walls. David stared at the debt notice. Jennifer stared at the police letter, 2 pieces of paper summarizing their destruction. He planned this, David said finally. Every detail. The loans, the trust, the recording, the timing. This wasn't reaction. This was execution. For 3 years we lived in his house, ate his food, drove his car, spent his money, Jennifer said, and complained it wasn't enough. We saw him as an obstacle instead of... She couldn't finish. Instead of what? A person? A father? Jennifer nodded. We forgot he was human. We treated him like an inheritance waiting to happen. They sat in silence. Outside, Portland's lights glowed. A city full of people living lives, unaware of the small tragedy in room 211 of the Starlight Motel. 2 people who gambled everything on greed and lost. Jennifer lay down, fully clothed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, understanding finally and completely there was no going back. This was their life now. This was what they'd earned. The same evening, December 28th, around 9 p.m., I sat in my reading chair, the leather one I'd owned for 15 years. Book open but unread on my lap. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for 3 years. Not empty. Inhabited. By choice. By peace. No television blaring from the guest room. No arguing about money, about me, about their entitled future. Just the subtle sounds of an old house settling, wood contracting in winter cold, the furnace cycling, rain beginning against windows. This was my home again, completely, undeniably, peacefully mine. On the coffee table lay the thick folder I'd assembled over 3 years. I opened it one final time, reviewing the Chronicle. Page 1. Transcript of overheard conversation, June 2022. David telling Jennifer, "He won't last forever, and this house will be worth a fortune." Page 15. Photographs of my original will versus the new irrevocable trust. Page 32. Audio transcripts of the December 20th conspiracy, each sentence damning. Page 45. Jennifer's signatures on 8 loan agreements, each clearly titled, each legally binding. I documented everything because I'd learned a hard lesson. Family alone isn't enough. Without respect, without basic decency, family becomes predation. This folder was my shield. Now, my vindication. I reached for my phone, dialed Thomas Sterling. "Thomas, it's Buford. They departed at 2 p.m. as required. I wanted to thank you for your precision." He assured me the trust was airtight, the debt collection proceeding normally, the eviction legally unassailable. Next call, Patricia Reeves. "Patricia, the trust is executed. Portland Breast Cancer Research Foundation and Oregon Food Bank will receive the property upon my death. Thank you for 20 years of faithful service." She expressed satisfaction that I'd protected myself. 2 phone calls, 2 partnerships concluded. The legal architecture of my protection was complete. I stood at the window, looking out at Portland's lights scattered across the valley. Breast cancer research. My wife had fought that battle 8 years ago, ultimately losing. The house she loved would fund research, so others might win. Oregon Food Bank. I remembered childhood hunger, remembered my mother stretching meals impossibly thin. This house would feed people who needed it. Jennifer and David wanted this property to fund their comfort, their leisure, their avoidance of responsibility. Instead, it would serve people who actually needed help. That felt correct. Not vengeful. Correct. Justice aligned with compassion, just not compassion for those who'd tried to exploit me. I returned to my chair, let myself remember. 3 years ago, Jennifer moved in with promises of just temporary. I'd believed her, wanted to help. But within months, the dynamic shifted. I became the inconvenience, the obstacle, the old man in the way. Little comments. "You really need all this space?" Financial requests. "Just help us with the car payment." Dismissive gestures, eye rolls when I spoke. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. I saw it happening and made a choice. Document everything, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. The worst arrived. My preparation saved me. I felt no guilt about that. I'd expected to feel victorious. I'd won, after all, kept my home, exposed their scheme, protected my assets, restored order. But sitting in that quiet house, I felt something different. Profound sadness mixed with relief. I'd lost my daughter, not to death, but to choices. Her choices, not mine. She'd chosen greed over relationship, conspiracy over honesty, entitlement over gratitude. I'd responded by removing myself from exploitation, but the cost was permanent severing. 36 years of fatherhood ended. I wasn't happy about that. But I was at peace with it. Some prices are worth paying to maintain dignity. I stood, walked through my house room by room. The guest bedroom, I'd convert it to a library, remove all traces of their occupancy. The dining room, I'd refinish that wine-stained table, restore what was damaged. The kitchen, I'd rearrange it for one person's efficiency, my projects, my space. Each room would be reclaimed, reimagined, repurposed. This wasn't the end of my life. This was a beginning. I was 64, healthy, financially secure, and finally free from people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. I stepped onto the back terrace, cold December air, sharp in my lungs. Below, Portland glowed. Above, stars emerged between clouds. I raised my coffee mug in a quiet salute to myself, to dignity, to boundaries, to the courage to protect yourself from those who'd harm you, even when they're family, especially when they're family. I finished my coffee, returned inside, locked the door, turned out the lights. Tomorrow I'd begin again. Tonight, I'd rest in the silence I'd earned, the silence after the storm, the silence of a home that was finally, completely, peacefully mine. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.